Judge Conrad Keller, weary from a night of deliberation, adjusted his robes and exhaled. Before we proceed with sentencing, is there anyone who dares speak in defense of the accused? A long silence followed. Then, a voice rang out from the back. I will. Gasps rippled through the crowd as a man stepped forward. The streets of Zurich in 1565 were restless. The once bustling town where merchants bartered and townsfolk gossiped now bore an eerie silence. It was as if something unseen lingered in the air, an unspoken fear that gripped the people's hearts. At first, it was just whispers. A traveler bitten by a stray, a child feverish after a scratch, a farmer foaming at the mouth, ranting in a delirium before collapsing to his death. Then, the rumors took shape. Rabies, a sickness without cure. A slow descent into madness. Tensions flared as the sickness spread. The city guards, usually occupied with thieves and brawlers, found themselves answering panicked knocks on their doors. Each report was the same. Someone had been bitten, and now they were feverish, their behavior turning erratic. Fear spiraled into paranoia. Then one evening, under the dim glow of oil lanterns, a name surfaced. A witness claimed to have seen a dog, a large, scruffy beast with piercing eyes, lingering near every victim. It was no ordinary stray, they said. It had been seen too often, too close to where the sickness had begun. The town council, desperate for answers, ordered an immediate search. Dogs were common in Zurich, but this one was different. It was elusive, intelligent, almost as if it knew it was being hunted. Then, one fateful night, it was found. Near the banks of the Limmat River, guards cornered the animal. It did not snarl, nor did it cower. It simply stood there, its dark eyes reflecting the torchlight, its breath visible in the crisp night air. For a moment, the men hesitated. Then the captain gave the order, "Seize it." The dog did not resist. It was shackled, its fur matted with dirt, and led through the streets like a prisoner. The city, once gripped by fear, now buzzed with excitement. Murmurs filled the air. Had the culprit finally been caught? Had justice found its mark? Little did they know, Zurich was about to witness one of the strangest trials in history. The heavy wooden doors of Zurich's courthouse groaned as they swung open. Inside, the chamber was dimly lit, the scent of damp wood and burning tallow candles thick in the air. Town officials, merchants, and onlookers crowded into the room, murmuring in hushed voices. At the front of the hall, seated on the magistrate's bench, was Judge Conrad Keller, a man known for his stern gaze and unwavering belief in justice. Before him, a peculiar sight unfolded, a dog, shackled at the neck and legs, guarded by two armed men. The murmurs grew louder. A dog on trial. It seemed absurd, yet no one laughed. Fear had tightened its grip on Zurich, and in desperate times, even the unthinkable could become law. The prosecutor, a tall, wiry man named Johann Metzger, stepped forward. He adjusted his robes, cleared his throat, and turned to address the courtroom. "The accused stands before you," he declared, his voice carrying across the hall. "A creature of mischief, destruction, and death. This very animal has been seen lurking near every victim, sowing sickness wherever it treads. It is no ordinary beast, it is a menace to this city." The audience stirred. Some nodded in agreement. Others exchanged uncertain glances. Judge Keller tapped his gavel against the bench. "Does the accused have an owner to speak in its defense?" Silence. The guard shifted uncomfortably, but no one stepped forward. The dog had no master, at least, none who would dare claim it now. "Then it shall stand alone," the judge continued, "and the evidence shall speak for itself." The first witness was called. A frail woman, her hands trembling, took the stand. "My husband, he was bitten," she whispered. "This dog was there. 2 days later, he fell ill. The fever took him." Her voice broke, and she could not continue. Another man testified next. "It prowls the alleys at night. I've seen it near the butcher's shop, near the baker's door, near the sick." One by one, the accusations mounted. The dog, silent and still, made no effort to resist or protest. It simply watched, its dark eyes unreadable. Finally, Judge Keller turned to the prosecutor. "What punishment do you seek?" Johann Metzger straightened his robes and inhaled deeply. "This beast has spread terror, disease, and death," he said. It should face the ultimate sentence, just as any criminal would. The room tensed. The judge frowned. The law was clear when it came to murderers and thieves. But this was unprecedented. Could a mere animal truly be held responsible for such a crime? Keller exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "We will convene tomorrow to deliberate," he finally declared. "Justice will be served." With a heavy bang of the gavel, the trial was adjourned. As the guards led the shackled dog back into the cold night, the people of Zurich whispered among themselves. Would the city's fear demand blood, or was something far more unsettling at play? The morning sun cast long shadows over Zurich as the townspeople gathered once more outside the courthouse. The air was thick with tension. Would justice be swift, or would this strange trial take an even stranger turn? Inside, the court was already in session. The dog, still shackled, sat motionless before the judge's bench. Its dark eyes roamed over the sea of faces, but it neither growled nor whimpered. If it understood the weight of the moment, it gave no sign. Judge Conrad Keller, weary from a night of deliberation, adjusted his robes and exhaled. "Before we proceed with sentencing, is there anyone who dares speak in defense of the accused?" A long silence followed. Then a voice rang out from the back. "I will." Gasps rippled through the crowd as a man stepped forward. He was dressed in a scholar's robes, his beard neatly trimmed, his posture firm yet calm. It was Matthias Faber, a physician known for his studies in medicine and the nature of disease. The prosecutor, Johann Metzger, sneered. "You intend to defend this beast?" Faber met his gaze without flinching. "I intend to defend the truth." Judge Keller raised an eyebrow. "Very well. Speak." Faber turned to the crowd. "We stand here today because of fear," he began. "Fear of a sickness that takes lives, fear of what we do not understand. But should fear dictate justice?" The audience murmured. Some nodded, others scowled. Faber continued, gesturing toward the dog. "Tell me, does this creature hold a blade? Does it conspire in the dark? Does it seek vengeance or wealth?" Dilens. "No," Faber answered himself, "because it is an animal. It does not act with malice, it acts on instinct. If rabies has spread, it is not because of a single dog, but because the sickness moves unseen, passing from one to another before any of us realize the danger." The judge leaned forward. "And yet, Master Faber, we have testimonies, witnesses who saw this dog near every victim. Are you saying this is mere coincidence?" Faber nodded. "Yes, think of a raven that appears before a storm, or a shadow cast by the setting sun. This dog is no more guilty than a wind that carries illness through the streets." The prosecutor scoffed. "You expect us to believe this? That we should simply let this menace run free?" Faber shook his head. "No. If the dog is sick, then it must be kept from harming others. But to put it on trial, to call it guilty of crimes only men are capable of, that is not justice. That is superstition." The room fell silent. Judge Keller drummed his fingers against the bench. He was no fool. He knew the weight of Faber's words, but he also knew the fear of the people, and fear often demanded a sacrifice. Finally, he sighed and raised his gavel. "This court shall reconvene tomorrow for the final decision." The verdict was near, but would reason prevail, or would fear demand blood? The dawn of the third day painted Zurich in hues of gray. A heavy mist clung to the streets, as if the very air held its breath in anticipation. Inside the courthouse, every seat was filled. The murmurs of the gathered crowd, a low, uneasy hum. At the center of it all, the accused, a dog, shackled like a common criminal. Judge Conrad Keller sat rigid on the bench, his face a mask of contemplation. The previous day's defense had shaken him, made him question the very foundation of the trial. But he knew one thing: logic was weak against fear. With a heavy breath, he struck his gavel. "We shall hear closing arguments before the verdict is passed." Prosecutor Johann Metzger rose with confidence, his voice sharp and unwavering. "This city is plagued," he declared, pacing before the crowd. "Our people are dying. This animal, this wretched beast, has been seen lurking in the shadows, trailing the sick, bringing ruin wherever it treads." He turned to the dog, its fur dirtied by the days of captivity. "A beast that spreads disease is no different from a murderer. Would you let a killer roam free? Would you risk another child's life? Another mother? Another husband?" The crowd stirred. Fear flickered in their eyes. Some nodded. Others clenched their jaws. Metzger drove the final nail into his argument. "This is not vengeance, Your Honor. This is justice." Matthias Faber stood next. His face, calm and collected the day before, now showed the weight of his burden. He knew the tide was against him, but he would not let reason fall without a fight. "You are right about one thing, Master Metzger," he said. "We are afraid, but when has fear ever led to wisdom?" He turned to the people. "You call this creature a murderer? But tell me, has anyone seen it bite a man? Has anyone seen it attack? Or do you simply believe because fear tells you it must be true?" Silence. Faber pressed on. "Rabies is not the work of a single animal. It is a sickness spreading through all things, rats, wolves, even our own livestock. To kill this dog is to claim victory over shadows." He looked to Judge Keller. "If we do this, what will we do next? Kill every dog in Zurich? Every wolf in the mountains? Will we burn our own cattle when they fall ill?" His voice softened. "Justice is not meant to feed our fears. It is meant to protect us from them." Judge Keller exhaled. The weight of the city sat on his shoulders. He could see both truths, one of fear, one of reason. But he also knew his people. They were afraid, and fear always demanded a sacrifice. He raised his gavel. "The court finds the accused guilty." The words sent a ripple through the chamber. Some cheered, some sighed in relief. Others, like Faber, lowered their heads. Judge Keller's face was unreadable as he spoke the final words. "The sentence is death." The verdict was sealed. The dog would die at sunrise. But as the courthouse emptied, leaving only flickering candlelight and the echo of fading footsteps, one question remained unanswered. Had justice truly been served? The first light of dawn stretched over Zurich, casting long shadows against the courthouse walls. A somber hush had settled over the town. The execution was set. In the town square, a wooden platform had been raised overnight. The crowd gathered, their faces a mixture of anticipation and unease. Some whispered that the dog's death would cleanse the city of the rabies curse. Others shifted uncomfortably, unable to shake the feeling that something about this trial had felt wrong. At the center of it all, the condemned stood silent. The dog's dark eyes, neither wild nor fearful, gazed at the people who had judged it. The shackles rattled slightly as the guards secured the final chains. Judge Conrad Keller arrived, his expression grave. He had passed the sentence, but as he watched the animal motionless, resigned, he felt the weight of his decision in a way he had not expected. By the executioner's side, Johann Metzger, the prosecutor, stood with his arms crossed. "It is for the good of Zurich," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Matthias Faber stood among the crowd, fists clenched. He had fought with logic, with reason, but reason had not won. He felt an anger deep in his chest, but also something else, a quiet, growing fear. The executioner stepped forward, a long blade gleaming in the morning sun. The air was thick with silence. The order was given. The dog had remained silent throughout its trial, throughout its captivity, even as it was dragged to this very moment. But now, for the first time, it growled. The sound sent shivers through the crowd. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was something else entirely. Then it howled. The deep, sorrowful sound filled the square, echoing against stone and wood. People flinched, some gasping. The howl stretched longer than it should have, an eerie, haunting wail that sent a chill through every spine. Even the executioner hesitated. Then, as if sensing it was time, the dog turned its gaze to the sky, and it closed its eyes. The blade fell. Silence. The platform had been dismantled. The shackles had been discarded. The dog's body had been buried outside the town walls, as if even in death, it was not to be trusted. At first, the people of Zurich felt relieved. They had done what was necessary. The sickness would end. But then, the rumors began. Days after the execution, new cases of rabies were reported, not fewer, but more. Farmers' livestock began foaming at the mouth. A butcher's apprentice fell ill. A town guard, who had not been bitten by a dog but by a rat, succumbed to the fever. And in the dead of night, some swore they heard the howl, low, distant, carried by the wind. Matthias Faber left Zurich soon after, unable to bear the sight of a town that had chosen fear over truth. Judge Keller never spoke of the trial again. As for Johann Metzger, the man who had led the charge against the accused, his fate was whispered in hushed tones. One evening, while walking alone through the darkened streets, he claimed he had seen something. Two dark eyes, watching from the alley. He never spoke of what happened next. But the following morning, Metzger was found trembling in his bed, feverish, his mouth dry. His final words before the sickness took him chilled the hearts of all who heard them. "I can still hear it. Years passed, and the people of Zurich tried to forget, but the trial of the rabid dog became a tale told in hushed voices, a warning, a lesson, a reminder that fear, once given power, demands more and more, and that justice, once bent to the will of fear, never truly heals.